Hi, Philip. Thanks for joining today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Mark.
Where are you joining us from?
I am in New York City.
Okay. Is it pretty warm? I know we're right before July 4th and it's been hot all over the country.
Heat wave is terrible. Yes. Yesterday I didn't want to go outside. I went 20 minutes and I had to sit down for 15. It was awful.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I think Detroit's over 100 today, too. Like the country's definitely getting hit. The U.S., right? We're on our nation's capital. We've got the big party and it's 100 and something degrees there, too. Maybe
Yeah.
no fireworks. Anyway, thank you, Philip, for joining us. Let's talk a little about what you're focused on right now and what brought you. What was the sort of journey to this point and the business you're currently investing your time in?
Yeah. So a little bit background on me. I went to the University of Michigan where I studied business computer science. I had my own e-commerce business all throughout college. And then I sold it my senior year to pay my college tuition. After that, I went to go be a product manager at Microsoft, and it was a terribly, terribly boring job. So I left to go do the whole startup thing. That didn't work out. So I ended up going to a university program called the Schwarzman Scholars at Tsinghua University in Beijing. It's a year-long program. They fly 120 people from all over the world to China. You study together. Super fun. Met all my best friends through that program. While I was there, I learned how to go viral doing content marketing and TikTok. And then, so after that program, I started a content marketing agency helping brands get at least 1 million views a month on social media. That business was really hard to scale. So I ended up leaving. But while I did that, I had hired a team of over 15 video editors in the Philippines to work for me. So I went to go join a Series A healthcare company called Rupa Health as like their head of content and media. I did that for a year. I built all of that out. And then eventually I became head of growth for the whole business. And while I was there, I'd built as a team of 25 people overseas. And then in October 2024, FullScript acquired Rupa Health. And I stayed there for 6 months before I left to go start Hire Overseas, which helps US companies build overseas teams like the one I did for Rupa Health.
That's great. I know that a lot of people talk about near shore, offshore, different. It's really you just look for the best people anywhere in the world. Is that kind of the approach?
Yeah, yeah. So we hire from different countries based on different companies' needs. So based on budget and how important hours are. So, for example, if you have an account manager, it is significantly easy. Like you need that person to work U.S. time zone, like hard, like 9 to 5. So Philippines is really hard because that person's up, that person's awake at 4 in the morning. Every bone and organism in their body is trying to make them go to sleep and do the bare minimum possible, and it's just not possible for people to perform highly while at 4 in the morning. The human body's not made to do that. So for roles that people want that real time communication, we try to do Latin America or Africa. And then we still hire a lot of marketing roles in the Philippines where, SEO, video editors, those people don't need to be available from 9 to 5.
That makes sense. I know when we talked previously, you said you found there's certain countries it tends to be like video editors are good in the Philippines and engineers are good from Africa and communications may be better in other countries. What do you think kind of drives that affinity? Is it cultural? What?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things. One, culture matters a lot. So, for example, lots of people like to hire in the Philippines. Philippines is the Southeast Asian country that has the most aligned culture with the United States. So, like, context is really easy to switch. Like, Philippines usually ranks as the number one country that likes the United States. We have lots of military bases there. The United States helped develop that country. And also, I believe it is Sri Lanka, Malaysia, and the Philippines are the only Southeast Asian countries required English learning grades 1 through 12. So like you have way higher density of people that are fluent in English versus other places. So one, you have like culture, which is a lot of like historical context, such as like what their education program is, what the US's influences over them the past 50 years have been. And then the other one is skill wise, which I don't necessarily have a great explanation, but I know from talking to both other agency platforms, plus like the founder of Dribble, which is a design platform, used to say that like Ukrainians were the best at design, which is funny because I found I had a very similar experience, which doesn't mean you can't find other really talented people in every country. There exist talented people in every skill set within every country, but certain ones do have a higher density. Like for example, SEO, for some reason, highest density in the Philippines, where it's just not worth us looking at other countries anymore because we've tried and it just takes significantly longer. It is way harder. And we have found really good SEO people in Latin America and Nigeria, but generally the Philippines works really well. It is also one of the cheaper ones of those geographies. So we tend to go for highest skill plus lowest cost plus best availability plus English fluency. Those are kind of the four things that we look for based on the country we're hiring from. Where, yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And when you're looking at function, and so SEO just came to mind. Of course, search engine optimization has been the long time basis for how anybody finds anybody on the internet. Now, answer engine optimization is becoming the new path, and how that works is so different. Are you finding that as you plug in people to help with AEO, it's a different skill set or different answers, or do you find those folks transition well to that new approach?
Yeah. So new skills, it's fair game. Like, and what I mean by that is finding really good AEO people is like impossible, simply because realistically, a lot of the way overshore's talent gets developed is agencies. For agencies, marketing agencies, AI implementation, any type of service business, for them to have really good margins, your options are either you sell to Fortune 500 companies and do six-figure contracts, and then you can staff 100% Americans. If your contracts are less than like, $15,000 a month, it's very, very hard to make those business models profitable with 100% onshore people. So a lot of the overseas talents actually gets developed by agencies. A lot of the best contractors we find overseas all have agency experience. For example, SEO. A lot of these overseas SEO people will work on anywhere from 5 to 20 different clients per agency they work at. So they're stoked when they get to leave an agency and just work on one business because it's way easier. You get to see the action, like the results of your actions. It's easier to like move the number versus when you're split across 10 different, 20 different projects. Even if the work's not high, the context switching is so high, it makes it impossible to do a good job. So with a lot of these like newer skill sets, realistically, there's very few agencies that are actually good at AEO and can move the needle for you, which means the amount of contractors overseas that are actually good at it is, just as many. So with a lot of these new skill sets, you either have to train them yourselves or you have to get like really, really look. So with the AE, and then specifically with AEO is so complex. Like I recommend 2 to 3 contractors just if you want to like actually go on AEO. So like, for example, within my business, like we're betting on 3 different growth channels, but one of them is AEO. And we have a full-time web developer, 2 SEO people that are also working the AEO stuff, and then plus me, where I mostly do our strategy and allocate probably like 10 to 20 hours a week just for that.
So when someone comes to you and they're considering offshore as the next step for solving some problem, what usually makes them think offshore versus the Americans? It's not just cost, is it?
No, I mean that's a big factor, right? Like that. I mean that's pretty much the only one. Just because like it's really hard for a company to justify $60,000-$100,000 a year for like a graphic designer to support a marketing team, right? Like if graphic designing is a main function of your company, I think it makes a bit more sense. But if you're a marketing team supporting the product team, like you now need a lot of support functions, and it's very hard to justify having those in the US. Also, just like contractor agreements are way more flexible. You don't have to pay health insurance. There's no payroll taxes. So the costs end up being significant beyond just salary, like in turn, also flexibility, right? Where it is significantly easier to bring an offshore contractor. So one thing we've had happen with clients is they'll start a role with an offshore contractor and then they'll hire a full-time American because like it's easier to do an experiment for 3 months with an offshore contractor than it is, say hire an American. Yeah.
And the financial risk of that offshore experiment is so much lower.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually you can find like, if you have a 1% person in the United States is like the most competitive market in the world. So like it is very, very, very hard to find like 0.01% talent, and if you do, like, it's still expensive, right? Like I have met overseas people that are very expensive because they're very good at what they do. Like if you're really good at what you do, you can charge a high cost. Candidly, a lot of the value is derived from people that don't know their worth, which can sound bad, but there's lots of people out there who do not realize how good they are and how talented they are. And that's kind of like the idea of like this Moneyball game of how do you find underpriced talent. And it's the same thing in the US, right? Where like, you can have someone from a state school and someone from an Ivy League school, and the person from the Ivy League school is probably going to cost more, but the state school person is better. And it's based on like, who are they surrounding themselves with? What is the market rate in their head are all factors that play into that.
And the time that they'll often invest, and sometimes when you're at the state school, you're more hungry, and so you'll really put that energy into developing your skill. Yeah.
I mean, I went to the University of Michigan, which is like a good school, but it's not Harvard, and I worked way harder than because I didn't have those accolades. And they do make it easier. Like when people ask me, like, Philip, I need to hire a head of growth. Like, who do I do? I'm like, state school kid, chip on their shoulder, proven evidence of being able to make money. And like, but doesn't like have the confidence to start their own company. And that's like your target person.
Yeah. So how are you seeing AI in your space? Are you encouraging your contractors to make it part of how you deliver for your clients, or is it something different?
Every single contractor I reject now, I literally tell them what to learn. So I've been telling everyone, I'm like, if you don't learn at least Claude Cowork, you will not be able to get a job in 6 months. Because the output of someone like Claude Cowork is my favorite tool just because it's like very contained. It's very easy to connect everything. I like the user interface more than Claude Code for a lot of the stuff I do. And yeah, if you don't know how to use that tool, like your advantage is just so high. So every EA candidate, every person, like we're developing all of our own in-house training stuff for Claude. And now at this point, like I have our marketing team. Every time they do something new with Claude Cowork or build a new workflow, we record a loom of it so we can add it to that training program because it's just required at this point. But you also get paid way more. The example I was going to give is we have an SDR that, he's worked with like 4 different clients of ours. And I interviewed him for another position with a client this week. And I was like, Kier, if you like can only do email and phone calls, I pay you $1,500 a month. If you learn Claude Cowork, and you can be a go-to-market engineer, I can pay you $2,500. And you need to go learn these tools, and your market demand will literally double your salary. So for a lot of these overseas people, like learning these new tools is a huge step up, because that's 100, almost a 60 to 100% salary increase, which is monumentally impactful for a lot of these people.
Absolutely. No, that's amazing. So obviously you've said you lean towards Claude. Any reason in particular that one stands out versus ChatGPT or some of the others?
Claude Code was the best, and I really like Claude Cowork, so now I just stick with that, and now it has all my connections and data, so I don't want to switch. I just found Claude Code to be better than Codex, and then I've just stick with Claude Cowork. I don't even know if Codex has an equivalent to Claude Cowork.
Yeah. Now that Mythos is back on the table, have you had a chance to play with it a little bit?
For a lot of the stuff I do, I don't actually think it matters that much. I think for coding, it probably has a bigger impact, but for a lot of the writing stuff, I haven't seen a huge difference.
Yeah. I know, to your point, I've been using it, but I don't know that it's worth the 4 times the tokens versus,
exactly.
Sonnet when Sonnet's solving the problem.
Yeah. A lot of the things I do is, Open Router is a really cool API that allows you to call every model. So if I am doing a marketing piece, I will have that API use the different models to write for me. Because like the way you really blow through your tokens is like coding an entire product and doing loops. But if you're doing writing, the cost is so low. So I'll call the different, like I'll have Gemini, Codex, DeepSeek, and Kimi all write a version of it and then figure out like what is the best.
That makes sense. We mentioned Kimi. Is that something that you explore at all for you and your teams as the more standalone, non-cloud based technologies like AI is there anything do you use it specifically for, or do you rely on the cloud more?
Yeah, so I just started experimenting with a lot of the open source models simply because the cost is a factor of like 5 to 10x lower than OpenAI and Anthropic's models. So I'm really interested in open source simply because I think the really big wave in the next 6, 12, 24 months is going to be all these companies switching from these really high cost models to lower ones as there's just diminishing return in cost, right? So, if Kimi and DeepSeek is performing the same quality of output across Claude's and open, Claude and ChatGPT's models, you're way better off using the open source ones.
And so you play on the international stage. Obviously, you just referenced the education portion in China. Do you worry about these Chinese models, being nefarious in some way, or?
Yeah, man. I mean, if you're a defense contractor, yes, but if you're an offshore company or a marketing agency, like it doesn't matter.
Okay.
But I'm not really worried about China being nefarious because I am probably way more pro-China than most people, just because I've spent so much time there. So I'm not really worried about that. I think if you're a higher sensitive company, yes, because intellectual property theft is real. But if you're running those models on your GPUs, I don't think that should be an issue.
That makes a lot of sense. That's good. So when you're engaging with a client and they're asking, are you usually working on staffing specific roles? Do you help clients with teams, or is it more outcome based? How do you usually approach that conversation?
Yeah, so right now it's all over the place. So for some companies, we just do one person. For other companies, we do every at like a ton of roles. Like one of our clients, I think we have 25, 30 people. We do not sell outcomes. I cannot guarantee outcomes. We place people to get outcomes and results for clients. We don't really have influence over that. So for us, like I will check on the outputs and results of our contractors, but mostly we're placing and selling like kind of functions. So the way I tell people and explain it is kind of like your team should be driving strategy, but if you need someone to execute a specific function, that's where contractors come in. Companies have to do so much now. Like with AEO, there's link building, there's content writing, there's guest posting, there's YouTube, there's Reddit. Like it is impossible for one person to be able to context switch across LinkedIn, Reddit, and blog content writing. And realistically, if you're really good at one of those, you're not good at the others. Like I'm okay at a lot of them, but I don't find myself being exceptional at any of these anymore because it's just so hard. Reddit, for example, switches every 6 months as they like start taking down content, and you really need to be on top of these things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, out of curiosity, you've, again, on the global stage, you've been all over China. You mentioned, startups. What brought you to New York? Why settle in New York City?
Oh, New York City's just fun by far. And it has the highest diversity of kind of ambitious people of any city I've been to, where, I have friends that work in tech, politics, etc. And I think people in New York City are actually focused on making money. A lot of my problem with like the San Francisco crowd is like a lot of startups it's about raising rounds. It's not actually about building sustainable businesses or making money.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's one of the facades to some of that is a real business is profitable. It's not just, raising money and doing that smartly. It's actually being profitable.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. All the businesses I start have to be profitable from the get-go, and I am not a good venture-backed founder.
Yes. No, that makes a lot of sense. So do you have some portion, do you go into the countries and do some of the recruiting and build presence? Or how do you sort of, let's take Africa as an example. How do you begin a relationship in that country and then bring those people to bear for your clients?
Yeah, so a couple ways. I mean, the really simple one is job boards. Like all these countries have local job boards specific to the countries, so it's knowing what those are. The other one is like sub recruiting networks. So for a lot of countries, we actually have subcontractors that run businesses very similar to us, but they're not as good at getting clients. So we basically like will subcontract out recruiting for them. So we have like people that do that in El Salvador, Colombia, Nigeria. I mean, and like for example, I texted one of my friends who is Nigerian, and I was like, "Hey, do you know anyone like kind of in the space that could help?" And I got connected with a guy who did his PhD in the US, now lives in Nigeria and is developing tech talent in Nigeria for US and European countries. Ken literally sends us candidates. He runs a company similar to ours. So, and then we have our own recruiting team. So we have I think it's 12 or 15 person recruiting team. And then we'll hire recruiters specifically in those countries. So we have recruiters in the Philippines, Latin America, and we're currently hiring more South Africa and Nigerian recruiters.
So do you ever get a chance to go to some of the countries yourself? Do you have a favorite that you like visiting?
Yeah, I've only been to the Philippines. I was hoping to go to more of them as like we build bigger teams within these different countries.
Yeah. What'd you think of the Philippines? I've been to Manila.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the Philippines is great. Very nice weather, very clean air. Yeah, very nice beaches.
Yeah. And I find, to your point, the cultural fit is really great and the people are amazing.
Yeah, no, culturally very happy, smiley, bubbly, great customer facing roles.
Yeah. So if you were going to give advice to a US based person coming out of college right now, thinking about their career, I think you mentioned already you're telling your teams, AI is critical, make that a part of your future. Are there any other thoughts based on what you're seeing? Because obviously I think in your position, you're seeing a lot of organizations that are price sensitive, which is where they might usually spend on an entry level person. I feel like maybe they're coming to you instead because they want someone more experienced for the same price, but offshore. What are your thoughts on someone coming out of college in the US? How can they position themselves well to compete on the global stage?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's about how you can drive leverage, right? So, one of my friends took off, like, she quit her job and is taking off for 6 months. And she asked me, like, is this a good idea? Is this okay? And I told her, I was like, as long as you get very good at using AI, and beyond just like using prompts, right? So, the biggest thing is learning how to build things and just like, for example, our engineer on our marketing team built us an entire go-to-market tool that allows us to map our ICPs to companies in the US, finds their address, finds a local cake shop to their company, creates a QR code and custom design for each cake, ships it, emails the cake shop, places the order, pays for it, ships them the cake. And then the cake has a QR code that links to a custom landing page on our website, specifically designed for them representing their company. Like you need to be able to do that. It is my opinion, especially if you want to work in marketing, operational, any type of role. Like even if you're a PM, you now need to be able to mock things. So I highly recommend getting proficient with Claude Code because the models will just continue to get better. And a lot of the initial output is terrible, but it takes iteration. So even if I write a blog, like I've been doing a lot of guest posting on other magazines and other like websites for our brand. And, I just use Claude to write these things, but it takes a couple iterations and feedback to get it to where I want, or, creating the first example.
I think it's a really good point. Is so much of it is people complained about the initial slop that was coming out because you can't just have it speak for you. You need to refine it and make it your voice still.
Correct.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Any other thoughts, Philip, about how you're seeing AI and people and this global stage interact? Is it as simple as just get smarter on it and keep it up, or is there a next stage?
Yeah, so I've had like a breakdown because of AI because I thought I was going to go out of business twice this year. But I've completely moved on from that just because I think what I've seen personally from hiring companies and roles is like everyone needs to go up one abstraction level. So, if you were just a content writer before, you got to be able to do SEO and everything else. Like you can't just be a content writer anymore. So, for the example I'll give is like we hired a designer for a Series A AI company. And it's like the expectation is that person can build websites, do videos, graphics, like the scope of what you're able to do and the breadth has to be higher now. Just because like the amount of leverage and work you can get done is so much bigger.
So there's a little bit of that. Make sure you have more than one skill. Don't just be a marketing person. Don't just be this. It's be a little broader.
Correct. That is what I have seen work really well. Where like, for an EA, right? If you're an EA 3 years ago and you can use a computer very effectively, you're a good EA. Right now, the company I hired an EA for this week, they want the person to be able to build the second brain for their company. So like pull in all of their data across their messages, organize everything, be able to build automations. That used to be kind of one role, and now it's like EA plus that.
Yeah. So it's becoming a little more technical. I think we can rely on the, like you said, Claude Code or Claude Cowork to give us some guidance and help us through it. But you have to start adapting to that skill yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the bar is low. Like, the amount of people that don't know you can just ask Claude to tell you how to do something is crazy. Like whenever I want to do something now. So for example, I take Chinese lessons and I started with a new Chinese tutor. And, I literally asked Claude Cowork, I was like, I have Anki flashcards. I want to be able to do this, like, which is basically take all the words I learned from each of my classes, create a voiceover for how it sounds, and then create the CSV file with all the cards and upload it to my like flashcard tool. And I didn't know how to do it, but I just asked Claude how to do it. And then it just walked me through step by step on how to set all that up.
Yeah. So having that patience to ask and then follow the direction. But now there's a guide, like you have a guide for life, basically.
Yeah. And like Claude's not going to figure out the sources to connect for you, right? Where the value I see being derived the most is the ease of pulling data from different sources and deriving insights from that combined data, which didn't used to be so trivial. But now like another good example of something I'm really excited about is there's something called Haro, helpareporterout.com. It's a bunch of journalists and blogs request quotes and insights from experts across varying sources. And that email is so annoying to read every day. They send 3 emails, there's 50 links, you got to read through it and you got to see which ones apply to you. So what I do is I run a job at the end of every day on Claude Cowork that scrapes all 3 emails, identifies the queries relevant for me, and then based on the query, we'll search my circle back recorded calls and my Slack and my Notion to find unique insights driven from my work, and then pre-writes and pre-drafts the responses for all those emails. And then I just check my Gmail drafts every morning, go through them and click send after I like kind of proofread them. And the first version of that was terrible. It took me about 3 hours of iterating on prompts and setting up the workflow to get it right. But now they're like very, very, very good. And yeah, that's an example of something that I think is like almost the bare minimum.
Wow. Yeah, back to that iteration. And then that's what's nice is once you have it. I have found you can still get some drift. I know one of the number one memory things in my Claude is no M dash and any output ever. And every day it eventually drifts back in. And you got to remind it.
Yeah, no, I mean, so these systems aren't perfect. I do not think they will be perfect for a very, very long time. I think 95% of companies won't be able to figure it out. Like, two of my close friends are Stanford Masters CS people, and they're working at one of the accounting roll ups. So their company just buys accounting firms and then rolls them up and then implements AI. I call them to see what, like, where the world is. And, what their quote was essentially like, accountants will have jobs, but the jobs will change. And if you do not change with the job, you will not have a job. And I think that's 90% of roles now, where example I saw on Twitter recently was like, stay-at-home moms used to be really busy, and a lot of that was like doing laundry. And then we had the washer and dryer, and that saved a ton of time. But people still have work, right? So I think you just got to do more. And I think the world's going to become hyper competitive, and I think there will be way more businesses, and I think there will be way more small business as well, as smaller teams are able to get more done.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It's the future is people with AI, period. And if you don't get on with the AI, then you're right, you won't have a job.
Yeah, and it's just super simple. Like, if you're the other way I like to think about technology shifts is like, when the laptop came out, if you learned how to use a laptop, you made 10x more money, right? It just became a really valuable skill. It's going to be the same thing with AI, where at every cliff of technology improvement or advancement or something new comes out, if you don't learn those tools, you'll be part of the waterfall drop off where people are going to 10x their income and you will not be one of them.
Exactly. No. And there'll be pockets that still survive for some period, but that's the future.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to someone who bought a burlap sack manufacturing company before, and it was the third largest burlap sack manufacturing company in the United States. And he walked in, and they still had a VCR and a fax machine. So those companies do exist, and they have, like, anywhere from 1 to 100 long-term clients that are really loyal to them, and just they didn't need to advance or improve, right? But if you're the more competitive market you're in, the more you need to be able to adopt these tools to compete.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Any other final thoughts, Philip, you want to share with the audience?
Nope. Learn the AI tools. Offshore plus contractors is a really good formula for being able to scale your team, especially if you want to get more done in marketing with a lower cost basis, because whatever company has the lowest cost basis ends up winning. So I am a big fan of combining offshore and AI people.
Absolutely. Well, Philip, thank you for the time today.
Awesome. No, thank you for having me, Mark.